What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Canadian Football Fantasy Fix. I'm Ryan Coop here with a free agency preview for the quarterback position, taking a look through who's under contract already for each team in the CFL for 2022 and the options available and where they may go once free agency hits starting on February 8th. Yes, less than a month to go until the free agent period begins, so should be lots of activity coming in the next couple of weeks. So I figure why not take a look at the quarterback position so far, how things shape up the landscape there, and see how things may change over the next couple of weeks. So let's dive right in today and take a look. First off, let's start with here are the quarterbacks currently under contract in the CFL for 2022 for each team. Let's go through the West Division first. In BC, you've got Michael Riley, Nathan Rourke, and Kevin Thompson all under contract for next season. Now, the interesting thing here is there have been a lot of rumors about the future of Michael Riley in the CFL, of whether or not he is planning on retiring this year or in the next year or two. So there are, while he is still under contract, we do have some question marks there. If Riley comes back for another season, I think BC is very well set at quarterback. One of the top starters in the game. Great up-and-coming quarterback. Nathan Rourke had some good play when he got some time to play this past season. Another year learning under Riley could be very good for him there. I like that tandem. If Riley isn't ready to go, I'm interested to, or is not playing this year, decides to hang up the cleats, I'm very interested to see whether they would go with Rourke as the starter in BC or if they would bring in another starter, have him spend another year as a backup. So that's one situation there in BC that is a bit up in the air. Calgary seems to be locked in at the quarterback position for this season. Bo Levi Mitchell restructuring his contract for the final year of it. Jake Mayer re-signing in Calgary as well. You know that's going to be your number one, number two guy right there. They also just brought in a quarterback, Tommy Stevens, who will probably be, a third string guy for them. But Calgary seems pretty set at the quarterback position. Edmonton as well have a number of guys under contract. Nick Arbuckle signed to an extension by Brock Sunderland before he was released by the Elks and let go of his job. But ended up restructuring this deal once Chris Jones took over. So Nick Arbuckle still making pretty much the starter money here in Edmonton. Taylor Cornelius under contract. He played a number of games for them last season. He will be back with, reportedly, he's still making pretty much league minimum when it comes to quarterbacks. So that's not a bad deal for a backup. A guy who showed some flashes at times, still definitely needs to work on his game. There were a number of interceptions which were a problem for him. But I thought at times he looked good. Dakota Prukop, also, a good serviceable backup third string quarterback option. And then probably a practice roster guy in Kyle Oxley. But seemingly, I would assume Edmonton is going to roll with this crew. Granted, Chris Jones taking over, maybe wants to put his stamp on this team. You never know. I could see him potentially wanting to go out and get another guy in free agency. But I think this is the quarterback crew we're looking at in Edmonton for this season. In Saskatchewan, under contract, starter Cody Fajardo is one of the few riders that were actually under contract to start this offseason. He will be back as the starter again. Mason Fine is also still under contract. He was the third string. I think he ended up actually being the backup in that final game of the season and in the playoffs there. So Isaac Harker was the number two guy most of last season. Now Mason Fine, could he just slot into that number two role, or could the Riders be looking at a backup? I could see them going either way here, giving Fine that role or looking for a different option in free agency. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the only quarterback under contract there is Drew Brown, the third string. Both Zach Collaros and Sean McGuire set to become free agents. So the Bombers definitely looking to lock in a quarterback in free agency. Presumably, I would assume they're going to try to bring back at least Zach Collaros, and I assume that's the place where he wants to go as well. But as of right now, Drew Brown, the only quarterback on the roster for next season. Over in the East Division, the Hamilton Tiger Cats just got their big piece locked up. Dane Evans signed to a contract this week to presumably be the starter. You know, it's been a trade-off between Evans and Mazzoli the past couple of seasons. I don't think so anymore. I think Dane Evans is the clear starter here. I think Mazzoli's going elsewhere. We'll get to that in a minute. Other quarterback on the roster, spent time on the practice roster, was Jalen Morton. David Watford, third string, is a free agent there as well. So I see Hamilton, you know, they're good with Evans as the starter, but I think they need a backup here in the free agency period. Montreal's a team I don't expect to do much. I think they're already done. Vernon Adams Jr. Signed to a contract extension in December. He's their number one guy. Matthew Schultz, still a backup. I think showed some flashes when he got some playing time last year. A good second string option. Shea Patterson, a good third string, and then they also have Quinton Dormady on the roster as well. Did let go Trevor Harris, who joined the team late in 2021, but I think they're set with this crew here, and that's good options for them. Over in Ottawa, the quarterbacks under contract for 2022 are Caleb Evans, Devlin Hodges, and Taryn Christian. They all kind of were the go-to quarterbacks in the second half of the season. Early on, you know, it was Matt Nichols, Dominic Davis, but they ended up both going down to injury and turned the keys over to Evans for the most part, played most of the games. Hodges did get some playing time there. Taryn Christian, mostly in a backup role. I'm intrigued to see what Ottawa and new general manager Sean Burke do here. I think they go out and try to get a big fish in free agency as a starter. I don't mind the option of, you know, having guys like Caleb Evans or Devlin Hodges as a backup coming into next year, but I don't know if I'm sold on any of these guys as the starter in Ottawa. For Toronto, starting quarterback McLeod Bethel Thompson is a free agent, has not re-signed as of yet, but Antonio Pipkin and Cole McDonald under contract for next season. The second and third string guys both got some playing time there in the final game of the regular season. So that's where we're at in terms of who has contracts already for next year. Based on that, let's now take a look at the team needs and the players available. So here we kind of have the needs. I have BC, you know, potentially a starter or a backup. That's with the asterisk of only if Michael Riley does not come back for another season here. I think you could, you know, maybe a 1A, 1B situation with Nathan Rourke and somebody else. I think Edmonton and Calgary and Montreal are all locked in, as I mentioned, at the QB spot. Saskatchewan, potentially a backup. I put a question mark there. You know, Mason Fine, does he go full-time into that role? Do they look for another option there? Winnipeg needing both the starter and the backup. Hamilton needing a backup quarterback, as I mentioned, and then also looking for starters in Ottawa and Toronto, but think they're both good as a backup. So the pending free agents, according to the CFL website, Zach Collaros, Trevor Harris, McLeod Bethel Thompson, Jeremiah Mazzoli, Dominic Davis, Matt Nichols, David Watford, Sean McGuire, Isaac Harker, and Michael O'Connor. Now that's a good range, I think, of free agents, of a couple good starters available here and a couple of solid backups as well. So now the question becomes, where do I project each of these guys going? Well, let's start at the top. I think Zach Collaros goes back to Winnipeg. I think he is, and of course, this is just my predictions. Let me be clear on that. I have no insider knowledge on where any of these guys are going. But, you know, Collaros, fantastic start to his career, then had injury issues for so many years. Got traded a couple times in 2019, found a home here in Winnipeg, ended up being the MOP of the season and the Grey Cup, a historic season here. 2 straight Grey Cups for him. You have to think he wants to stick it out here in Winnipeg based on how well things have been going here for him. And I think that's going to be a priority for the Bombers to bring back as well. I don't think you can bring everybody back from that championship team, certainly, but Collaros has to be a focus, and I think he does go back to Winnipeg. Now, the most intriguing situation, I think, among potential free agent starters is Jeremiah Masoli, because Masoli, talent-wise, I think is what's still capable of being one of the top quarterbacks in the CFL, and I think potentially could be a guy that some of these teams looking for starters try to bring in. Now the big question mark is there's been a lot of talk about his vaccination status and reports and rumors of Jeremiah Masoli being unvaccinated, which he was still able to play in the Grey Cup because it was in Hamilton, but assuming vaccination rules are in place for this season, would not be able to travel with the team, which means pretty much out of luck in terms of a starter job, you would have to think. If your starter's not going to be able to go play road games, I think that's going to be a tough sell for anybody to bring him in. Now, of course, there is still a long offseason to go. Maybe Masoli does get his vaccines, is ready to go for next season. For the purpose of this exercise, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here that, he will be ready to go for the season. I think him, that seems to be the fit in Ottawa for me. Sean Burke, so much time over in Hamilton, working with the crew there. He comes over to Ottawa, wants to bring in his guy at quarterback. Masoli, a very capable starter on the field. I think if Masoli can play next season, I think he's the main guy Ottawa tries to go after in free agency, and I think would be a good fit there, starter-wise, for them. If he is not ready to go, then Ottawa's still looking for a starting quarterback here. I think Trevor Harris back to Ottawa is very intriguing. That's where he seemed to find a lot of success earlier in his career before going to Edmonton. I think Trevor Harris just makes sense there. Another guy that's still very capable of being a good starter in the CFL. There's been some question marks based on his play this season, but the Elks struggled as a whole, and I don't think that was all on Trevor necessarily. And I think he's shown that he can still put up massive games and is capable of being a starter, if not a starter, a 1A, 1B kind of option for a team. So Ottawa, I see, maybe plan A, go Masoli, maybe plan B, go Trevor Harris at the quarterback position for your starter coming into next year. That kind of locks in. That's my prediction for the starter spot in Ottawa. Toronto needing a starter. I think McLeod Bethel-Thompson goes back there. I think that Toronto is going to push hard for that. They seem to like what they saw in the guy. Otherwise, why would you have traded Nick Arbuckle during the season and anointed him your team's starter there without really a ton of a backup plan? I think they like what they've seen in Bethel-Thompson. I think he is an up-and-down quarterback. Sometimes he has fantastic games. Sometimes, he struggles quite a bit. There's always a knock on him in terms of his interception rate and things like that. But building off of the solid season from last year, Toronto had a lot of injury issues this season. I would like to see Bethel-Thompson go back to the Argos in the full starting role this season and not, is it MBT? Is it Nick Arbuckle? Who's going to be the starter each and every week? Bring him back as the full starter, full season, full training camp here, and I think that's the move for the Argos and what I expect to see from them there. So we've got our potential starter in Ottawa, our potential starter in Toronto, Winnipeg, again, Collaros there. The interesting one for me is BC. Like I said, if Riley is not back next season, Nathan Rourke, I don't know if they'd be ready to just hand the keys fully over to him as the starter. Do you then look to bring in, say, Trevor Harris and try to compete there and get your 1-2 punch with Rourke and Harris? That wouldn't be a bad plan to me in that spot. for BC to look at. The other option I could see them doing is, let Rourke run with it as your main starter and bring in a veteran backup guy. Could a guy like a Matt Nichols be a nice fit as a backup there in BC? Plenty of experience, plenty of coaching available to a Nathan Rourke, and still able to play a little ball here and fill in a backup role there. You can probably, after his play this season, after his injury issues, get him for pretty cheap, which could give BC more room, especially after they just made Lucky Whitehead the highest paid receiver in the CFL. Maybe to bring back, say, Brian Burnham as an example, if they go cheaper here at quarterback with Rourke and, say, a Matt Nichols. So that's potentially where I see BC going with Riley and Rourke, or maybe Rourke and Nichols, or something of the likes there. So that kind of touches on a lot of the starters here. Now you have a couple teams. Saskatchewan, do they bring back Isaac Harker to be the backup? Do they look at one of these other options? Do they stick with Mason Fine? That's one I don't know really where I see them going. I think they maybe bring another piece in for at least some competition in training camp, but could see them sticking with the duo they currently have. Hamilton needing a backup and the Bombers needing a backup. There's some interesting ones available here. None of them really stand out to me as like a go-to guy that, I would be sold on. Say my starter goes down and I need, somebody to come in for the next 6 weeks and take over the starter. Sean McGuire, great short yardage guy, able to come and make some plays like that. Served well in a backup role there for Winnipeg. But we saw him as a starter in one of those games down the stretch really struggle. So that gives me some concerns of the backup, the role there for a guy like Sean McGuire. Same thing, Dominic Davis has been up and down. He's had some time as a starter. He might be one of the more serviceable backup options here that we see go to perhaps Hamilton or back to Winnipeg where it began. David Watford, mostly a backup third string role, got a couple starts this year for Hamilton. Did pick up wins in those, but really didn't jump off the stats sheet in those. I see that as a serviceable backup option there. Isaac Harker, not much to go off of in his time in Saskatchewan. And Michael O'Connor is a potentially intriguing option here. Calgary brought him in. He was listed as the second string guy. Everybody thought he was going to get the start when Bo Levi Mitchell went down. And all of a sudden, Jake Mayer came in and took over the starting spot there. And for those 3 weeks, set some CFL records along the way with 300-yard passing games in each of them. And O'Connor never really saw the field again. So could another team be interested in taking a chance on him as a backup here? So those are kind of your options at quarterback for free agency. Again, kicking off February 8th. I think there is some movement here potential, but I do see most of these starters going back to their current teams. In Collaros and Bethel Thompson, for example. I think Trevor Harris and potentially Mazzoli are the two, biggest question marks of probably going somewhere new, and where are they going? And then we see some backups slide in along the way and some tinkering. And, this is just a list of free agents based on who played last season. Of course, I expect teams to, do some scouting, maybe some drafting of quarterbacks and bring them in training camp and have some competition there. So we talk about these guys here. There could be somebody not on this list that's in a starter or a backup role next season. I doubt in a starter, but you never know, probably in a backup role. So that's how I see the quarterbacks playing out here. Let me know in the comments section what you think. Are you happy with where your team's at quarterback right now? Do you want them to make a change in free agency? If so, who are you hoping they go after? Who do you think they'll go after? I want to know what you think in the comments section, or tweet them at me at CooperTrooper42 on Twitter. We can discuss there. Stay tuned for more fun content coming throughout the offseason here. Next week, I'll be back to recap all of the latest CFL news from the past couple of weeks. As we make our way towards free agency, I'll also keep pumping out these previews. We'll look at the running backs, we'll look at the wide receivers, see who needs an upgrade, at either of those positions, and maybe go take a look at some defensive options along the way as well, just to do a little predictions here, see if we're right once free agency hits next month. So stay tuned for all of that to come. Check out, as I mentioned, follow me on Twitter for more CFL fantasy discussion there. And check out the Canadian Football Countdown if you want more CFL content. It's a weekly podcast I do. You can find it on all your favorite podcast platforms. Find it on Twitter at CF Countdown Pod as well. Doing a deep dive for each team on the 2021 season right now, weekly there. So stay tuned for lots of great content there as well as we roll through the CFL offseason and into free agency. As always, thanks for watching. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.